welcome to Fave Films of the Decade. I'm your host, Aaron Perella, and throughout this series, we'll be taking a look at my favorite movies from the 1970s all the way to the 2010s. One question I still get asked, even though I've talked about this in the past, is, what's your favorite movie? It's really hard for me to answer that because I don't have a favorite movie. I have several, over 800 to be exact. Now, I'm not going to stand here and talk about each movie individually, otherwise I'll be here forever. Instead, I'm going to list each of them off and base them according to the decades they were released in. My list will be split into 5 episodes, so in this first episode, we'll be looking at all of my favorite movies from the 1970s. Before I get into listing them, however, there's a few things I want to address. When I was pitching this series to friends, one of them asked me, why are you starting with the 70s? Aren't there any movies from the 50s or 60s that you like? Well, yes, but I don't have very many, whereas with the 70s, I have lots. So what is it about movies from the 70s that I like more? Well, for starters, the industry was changing. Hollywood had entered a new era known as New Hollywood. Filmmakers were able to express their visual ideas on film, have bold and innovative approaches to storytelling, and they didn't have to answer to studio executives who would demand how their movie should look. They were given a newfound freedom of creativity. Technological advancements were another thing. As new filmmaking techniques were introduced, like the use of handheld cameras, natural lighting, and on-location shooting, 70s films also looked different. They added a sense of realism and authenticity that earlier films didn't quite have. Some of the most groundbreaking, influential, and iconic films also came from this decade. Movies like The Godfather, Jaws, Taxi Driver, Rocky, and Star Wars. And because of these movies, actors who were just starting out like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Sylvester Stallone were put on the map, as well as directors like Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and George Lucas. But the biggest reason why I love 70s movies is because of my parents. They were in their late teens and early 20s when all those movies came out, and some of them left a huge impression on them. Now, as a kid, I was already a fan of a few movies from this decade, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Disney's version of Robin Hood, and Pete's Dragon. But when it came time to start watching grown-up movies, many 70s classics were introduced to me. And whether they remain timeless or haven't aged well, I love watching them. Now, this last thing I'm only saying once, so pay attention. Movies that were made for TV or went straight to video are not included on these lists, only theatrical releases. Documentaries and concert films are also not included. Even though they're described as reality-based movies, I just didn't feel the need to include them. Well, I feel I've said all that I've wanted to, so without further ado, here are my fave films of the decade, the 1970s. Starting off with 1970, this year would have me liking MASH, Hercules in New York, The Out-of-Towners, Going Down the Road, Kelly's Heroes, and 5 Easy Pieces. 1971 sees Get Carter, A New Leaf, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and now for something completely different, Play Misty for Me, Straw Dogs, A Clockwork Orange, Diamonds Are Forever, and Dirty Harry. 1972 only has 4 movies, The Godfather, Way of the Dragon, Deliverance, and The Heartbreak Kid. 1973 sees Live and Let Die, Enter the Dragon, American Graffiti, Rebel, Mean Streets, Badlands, Robin Hood, Serpico, The Last Detail, The Sting, and The Exorcist. 1974 sees Blazing Saddles, The Sugarland Express, The Lords of Flatbush, Chinatown, Death Wish, The Longest Yard, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Taking of Pelham 123, Young Frankenstein, and The Godfather Part 2. 1975, we're halfway through the decade now, and this year would have me liking Tommy, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, The Passenger, Jaws, The Rocky Horror Picture Show, Dog Day Afternoon, The Sunshine Boys, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. 1976 would have Taxi Driver, The Bad News Bears, Logan's Run, The Gumball Rally, Marathon Man, Car Wash, Carrie, Rocky, A Star is Born, and Silver Streak. 1977 sees Slapshot, Annie Hall, Star Wars, Smokey and the Bandit, The Rescuers, The Spy Who Loved Me, Pete's Dragon, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and Saturday Night Fever. 1978 would see The Boys in Company C, Straight Time, Jaws 2, Foul Play, National Lampoon's Animal House, Eyes of Laura Mars, Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke, Midnight Express, Going South, Halloween, The Deer Hunter, and Superman. And as for the last year of the decade, 1979 would see The Warriors, The China Syndrome, Mad Max, Manhattan, Alien, Rocky 2, The Muppet Movie, Meatballs, Moonraker, Breaking Away, More American Graffiti, Apocalypse Now, Monty Python's The Life of Brian, 1941, The Jerk, and Kramer vs. Kramer. Well, that's it for this episode, but hey, we're just getting started. Stay tuned for episode 2, as we'll be looking at my favorite movies from the 1980s. I'm Aaron Perella, and thank you for watching.